So I thought I would just give you guys a little chance to adapt to this because I know that you're not used to like seeing my face when I chat. So are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Hi. I am the person behind XJW Caleb. My name is Daniel. People call me Danny Lerman. By the way, before we start, you can look up my second channel on YouTube. I just made a video that, I think a lot of people in this community are gonna like, about a little certain someone. We're gonna premiere it over here on the channel, but you can watch it right now in my second channel, which is where I'll dump that kind of content that is, not really related to Jehovah's Witnesses whatsoever. But I'm sorry for the tank top only. I was gonna throw on a shirt on top, but it is very hot right now in this room, and this is what you see is what you get. This is the only top that I have that sort of matches the Caleb theme. Okay, I'm gonna go buy another top at Walmart. That is the top of my priority list. I mean, sometimes it's very cold, especially if you see me like doing this. That is a cool. That is a cool. I'm not smoking anything. It's the cold. This is already off to a great start. I started XJW Caleb because I was indoctrinated as a Jehovah's Witness pretty much since before I was born. I was born to a couple of very devout Jehovah's Witnesses who were devout before they even met each other. My mom used to be a pioneer in her congregation since she was a teenager, which was great because by the time my father found her, she was still a teenager. My father was 21 years old. My mother was 16 years old. So, I don't know if that is technically grooming. I think it sounds more like grooming if I tell you that they got married as soon as my mom turned 18, by the time my father was 23. So, I don't know if exactly if that's grooming, but that it was 100% appropriate in the Jehovah's Witness community at the time, because my father was also a Bethelite. My father was not just the son of a very prominent elder at the time, a very famous elder in the small city of Juarez. My grandfather was Zenobio Lopez, which a lot of people in Juarez know. Pretty much everybody old enough in the Jehovah's Witness community in Juarez would know who that is. And my father, as well as my uncle, they were Bethelites, so they could have their pick among the women in the Jehovah's Witnesses cult. And just to give you an idea of the kind of misogyny and control that the relationship worked under, let me tell you how they met, because they thought this was the cutest story. My father loved telling this story of how he went back from Bethel and he was in a convention, and back then, in the convention, you can still get food, and people would feed you. I think it costs something. I don't remember. So he saw this sister preparing the sandwiches, and he liked that sister, and he ordered a sandwich. Like he kind of ordered from her, but she didn't notice he was there, and she just completely ignored him. And my father used to say in a jokingly manner, "Oh, from that point on, I knew that I had to make her my wife so she would never stop making my sandwiches." And it would always get a big laugh from the people. It was just that casual misogyny. It's just a little bit of misogyny. Don't worry about it. The proper misogyny when they were married. My mother, she was a teenager when she got married. She knew nothing, and she was pretty much under the patriarchy structure of the house of my father, because they kind of like lived in a little apartment shed that my father built in the backyard of my grandfather's house. So it wasn't like it was a super happy marriage whatsoever, but they were very spiritual. So they applied to become circuit overseer. Well, my father applied to become a circuit overseer, and they started doing their practices and everything inside the city, which led them to get to know like pretty much half of all of the Jehovah's Witnesses in the city before I was born. And right when they got the assignment, they got the news that they were pregnant with me. I kind of talk about that in my video about my mental health. I was far sadder in that video, so it's a big downer. I don't know if you wanna watch that. Maybe watch it later. And that's the environment that I was born into. I was the very first of 3 kids. It was me, then my sister, who's like a year and 4 months younger than me, and my brother, who's like 3 years younger than me. And we were all born into this perfect little Jehovah's Witness family. I chose Caleb originally as an icon, as an avatar, because I see a lot of Caleb in me. If my childhood was animated, it would look a lot like Caleb's, except with all of the parts that you don't see in the animations, with all of the consequences of indoctrinating your child. You don't, that's not in the cartoon, but all of the pressure of being a good Jehovah's Witness, of being clean or presenting yourself, all of that was on me. All of the pressure of learning how to preach, learning how to teach other people when you go door to door. I felt that was on me. That's what I grew up learning. In fact, my parents were so devout that my first convention was when I was 2 days old. Not 2 months old, 2 days old. My mom had just had me, but she had a part in the assembly or convention or whatever it was. And the brother was about to not, cast her or whatever because she was pregnant. And my mom promised that unless it was the day that I was born, then she would be there. And it wasn't. It was 2 days after. So my mom was there with me. And 1,000 people with a lot of germs around a newborn baby. It's one of those things that my mom shared as a proud thing. And now I realize that, Jesus, that was not normal. That is not how people should behave with their babies. I learned how to read before even going to kindergarten because I've always loved learning, and I've always loved. I feel like there's so many things. There are so many things that I need to learn, and there's so little time that I have in this life, and I'll get to learn so little. And I've always felt that ever since I can remember. And I think that's because ever since I can remember, I've known how to read. My mom taught me the shapes of the letters and all of that stuff, along with shapes and colors. So by the time I was 4, I was already reading out loud. And that sounds great until you realize that what I was reading was stuff like this. This is from my book of Bible stories. This is about the 10 plagues. I particularly remember feeling conflicted about this little illustration over here that shows a firstborn being killed by God to be kind of hunting. Because the firstborns were the ones who were killed. And I was the firstborn, as my father always made a big deal about. So ever since I can remember, I've always had this idea that if I don't perform well, if I don't do well enough, God can kill me. And that is a reality that I accepted since I learned how to walk and talk. I'm telling you this not to make you feel sad or anything, but to show you just how early the indoctrination starts. Because a lot of people think, oh, why can't they realize that they're in a cult? They don't realize that they're in a cult because reality, at least for me, it wasn't reality. It was this veneer that I got in the cult, this way of seeing the world. I learned that that's how I should see the world since I started seeing the world. My first talk was when I was 6. It was a reading in the book of Nahum. I was so tiny that even with the little bench that you put for the platform, I still couldn't reach the platform. So they had to get a chair, and they have to lift me up. They just kind of lifted me up, and then put me like this, just while standing. That's the only way that I could reach the microphone because I was so tiny. Giving that talk is definitely among my first memories because I remember giving that talk, and I remember how everybody congratulated me afterwards. I remember how it felt like I just kind of read some passages, But then everybody was very proud and everybody was listening to me when I was reading, and that felt really good. And I wanted to have more of that because that was the only good part that I had of being a child. I never had access to video games because my parents didn't like video games. I don't know if a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses were educated like this, but I never really felt like I had time to just enjoy myself, to just be myself, to just watch cartoons. Anytime that I was just being a kid, like every time that I was just playing or watching something or doing whatever, there was always this long list of things that I hadn't done, like prepare with the meetings or read the Bible verses that I was supposed to read for that week that nobody reads, or prepare for the other meeting. Just a whole bunch of things that they told me that I needed to do. They just made it so every time that I was just enjoying myself and my parents saw me, I just felt bad because I realized that there was probably something that I should be doing at the moment instead of enjoying myself, which is probably why I have such a hard time just letting go and just enjoying myself right now. But that's for my psychiatrist. You're not my psychiatrist. You're a camera. Besides the fact that I wasn't allowed to be a child when I was a child, I felt like I had to be this tiny little perfect Jehovah's Witness little man. So besides not really having a childhood, the worst part of my childhood, I would say, was the physical punishment. My parents were very much believers of physical punishment. My sister used to be the one that got the most punishment. I only got, so-so. My brother got it very rarely. I remember that was a weekly occurrence. Usually like twice, 3 times a week, I would have physical punishment. The punishment would start by my parents telling me to go pick up a belt. The belt that they would whip me with. Through a lot of tests, I realized that the thick ones would hurt quite a bit and for a wider area, but for less time. But the thinner ones would only hurt in a small area, but it would hurt for sometimes until the next day. So every time I was about to be beaten by my parents, I would always have this little choosing game of how I would want to be whipped. My sister was very rebellious, and there were some times where she would just get it daily, sometimes multiple times a day. I also got it sometimes multiple times a day, but I don't think I ever got it more than 3 times in a day. Whereas my sister, she definitely got it, 5 times in a day in, the bad days. My childhood was extremely authoritarian. Obedience was the most important part in our childhood. I always had to be obedient and respectful towards my parents. It doesn't matter if I understood it or not. Obedience was the main thing. It wasn't to protect my siblings. It wasn't to be kind to other people. It was to obey. When you're a Jehovah's Witness, you have so many rules to obey. So being a child in a Jehovah's Witness was a terrible combination, especially for somebody who had undiagnosed ADHD and would go on to have undiagnosed OCD for a long time. And I had to grow really quickly because when I was 14, my parents moved to Guadalajara, and we moved with them. They didn't just move by themselves and left us in the house. Oh shit, would that have been better? We moved over there, and my father hired this 18-year-old kid that used to live in Juarez. So he would work in the print shop that he had. He was a Bethelite. He knew how to print stuff. So he made a print shop because, he was a Bethelite. So he was also in the paper business while it was crumbling. Very good idea. So he hired this dude, and he realized that my mom was kind of treating him with respect, kind of like one of us, because, I was 14. He was 18. My mom was like in her early 40s by that time. She started treating him kind of fine, but my father didn't treat his workers very well. So my mom started to, tell my father to treat him better, and that made my father extremely jealous. He was an extremely insecure person, and later on we realized that it was because he was cheating on my mom with, a lot of people, but we didn't know that at the time. So fast forward a couple of years, and my father fires this guy. So he's 20, And since he was living in the same place where he was working in, aka my father's print shop, he's suddenly jobless and homeless. So my mom kind of helps him out and, figures out a way to finding a job and a place to stay and whatever. And my father took offense immediately against that. And he started to kind of like poison our minds against this guy. So I kind of like hated this guy for no reason other than my father kind of told me that I should hate him. But that wasn't the worst thing. It quickly became very apparent that my father was following my mother around whenever she was around. She was usually like with my sister, and she was doing that kind of stuff. And they would just kind of like see him in the rearview mirror at random moments throughout the day. And they realized that, he was just following them around to just check up on them and to check if they were at the place where it just became a very hard and tenable thing because that immediately makes it so you want to hide, and then it looks like you have something to hide. It became an untenable, a very, very difficult situation that devolved into abuse that, again, I recount in my downer video where I'm also sad and very sad. And by the time that it devolved into that abuse of like that magnitude, that where we just couldn't stay in the same house anymore, I was only 18. My sister was 16. My brother was 14. I had just sold a car that had like $1,000, and so I just paid for everybody's bus ticket back to Juarez, so we could go back to base. I thought while my father calmed down and while we figured out what to do. I wanted to go back to live in my life. I didn't know that that was never going to happen. My father immediately moved out of the house, threw out a lot of our stuff. He moved into a smaller house, cheaper, 3 bedrooms. So if we wanted to move back, my mom would have to like sleep with him again because they were sleeping in different bedrooms, and some of us would have to share a room, even though we didn't want that anymore. When we left, we were a wreck, like an emotional wreck. I couldn't wrap my head around how that could happen inside Jehovah's organization. How could he, like such a respected elder, like how could he do this? How could this happen? Like surely that wasn't just gonna keep happening in the congregation. That wasn't just gonna be allowed to happen in the congregation. Surely there was gonna be some consequences. But there weren't, and that frustrated me because I couldn't point my finger as to why. Why is it that in God's organization this was being permitted, this was being allowed? It's almost like it wasn't. No, wait, because the people that received us in Juarez were actually great people. They were people that we kind of like met before we left, and the guy had turned into a really good elder. The wife had turned really nice, and they took us into the congregation. They told everybody in the congregation that we came, that we didn't have anything, and that we had just moved here because they realized that we weren't gonna go back anytime soon. So we didn't have clothes for the meeting. I didn't even have shoes, like more than the shoes that I was wearing. So the congregation really took care of us, even though they were very poor. We were in a very poor congregation. They still took care of us. They would show up sometimes, and they would bring like some food. We still had a house in Juarez back then, so we were able to live over there, so we didn't have to pay for rent, fortunately. And this was in the middle of the 2009 recession, so it was extremely hard to find any sort of job, especially in Juarez. So we were in big trouble, and the congregation really took care of us. The people in the congregation would go and bring us groceries. They would make sure that we ate. And there were times where if it wasn't because of the people in the congregation, we wouldn't have eaten. It really felt like Jehovah was taking care of us because we were so poor that there were times where we literally had nothing to eat. And then somebody would show up with some food or with some groceries, or they would buy some burgers across the street because they were extremely cheap, and we would just have a meal together. And it felt like Jehovah took care of us, because if it wasn't because of that, we wouldn't have eaten that day. And the fact that we were so poor and yet we somehow weren't hungry was, to us, nothing short of a miracle. So I remember that time to actually be my strongest time in the faith. I was so into being a Jehovah's Witness. I was into being an extremely good Jehovah's Witness. That is, like, by the time I was 20 and we came back to Guadalajara, my faith had just solidified, because I had seen the best of Jehovah's organization, which is the community, how the community can help you, even if they have nothing. The Jehovah's Witness religion is filled with beautiful, kind people that even if they're poor, they would literally take the clothes off their backs so you have something to cover yourself. I experienced that, and that is what solidified my faith, because I kind of wanted to pay it forward. They were doing all of that just so I could be the good Jehovah's Witness I should be. And that is the little sinister implication whenever there is something nice done by Jehovah's Witnesses. It's done that so you can be your best Jehovah's Witness self. And I took that to heart. I wanted to be the best Jehovah's Witness I could be. I felt like Jehovah had taken care of me, even though it was the people in the congregation. They took care of us. They were kind. But the organization, the religion, has a very good way of twisting that. So you feel like it's God, it's Jehovah. Jehovah is taking care of you. And that's certainly how I saw it at the time. So by the time we came back to Guadalajara after a couple of years, I already had a job in Starbucks, which, paid the equivalent of, I don't know, less than $200 a month, which to me, like, that was a lot of money. Like, all of that money went directly to my mom, so she could just pay for rent and pay for groceries and pay for all of that stuff. And even though we came back to Guadalajara, I remember before coming back, meeting with the elders so they could give us encouragement. And I remember them saying, your dad is betting on you losing faith, on all of you losing faith. That is what your dad's betting. That's why your dad's doing all of that stuff. He's betting on you losing faith. Don't prove him right. I think those two things, just seeing how good the organization was and wanting to prove that I wasn't a good Jehovah's Witness, that plus the fact that I had never even questioned the existence as a Jehovah's Witness sees it. Life was here, created by Jehovah. We're going to live in a paradise after we die, all of that stuff. Like, I hadn't questioned that. That made my faith extremely strong. So by the time I was 23, for the very first time, I had this chance of going back to Juarez. And I had been looking forward to go back to Juarez to visit my cousin, who was worldly. And because we had just been chatting. And he had a lifestyle that I found really appealing at the time. He was a musician, and he kind of lived like this fuckboy lifestyle. And I found all of that very alluring. I knew that I was never, obviously, that I was never, that I didn't want to be destroyed in Armageddon. Thank you very much. But being in the vicinity, it was almost like experiencing through him the things that I couldn't have. So I gathered just very little money. I can't believe I had less than like $300, and I went there without a ticket back, because the plan was to pick up a car that my mom was trading for the house. That's a long story. We're not going to get into it. But the point is, my mom had a car that she wanted to move from Juarez to Guadalajara. So the plan was, I go over there without a ticket back and with like $300 in my pocket, less than $300. It was like $200 in my pocket. I just meet him for a while, and then we drive back, like after like a week of just chilling and writing songs and just playing the guitar and whatever, which sounded really appealing. But since the moment that I met my cousin, I could tell that he didn't want to go back. with me, and he didn't want to like take that long drive, and I kind of couldn't afford to drive all the way because I was kind of counting on him to pitch in. So that was a tough situation, but I didn't want to make it tougher because it was just my very first day, and besides, he didn't pick me up from the airport. This girl whom he had been dating sort of temporarily like a year back, she's the one who picked me up. He just told me, no, just text her. She's very nice. It's fine. It's just we're in dicey territory. Like I can't really text her, but you text her. She's very nice. She's super nice. Don't even worry about that. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that because I don't know her. But given that I had very little money, a couple of days before, I happened to text her. And she asked if I had somebody to pick me up from the airport. And, she ended up picking me up from the airport. I arrived at like 7 or 8 p.m. and she had a gig at 10. She was a singer. And my cousin wasn't at home, so she couldn't just drop me at my cousin's home because I didn't have the keys. So I was kind of like stuck with her for a while, and she was stuck with me for a while. And my cousin just told me, oh, I'm just going to pick him up. Like, can you just take him at the gig? So I pick him up from there, and then I'll take it from there, right? So she goes to her apartment really quickly. Like, I stay in the car. Like, she goes and she changes into her outfit. And then once she changes into her outfit and, her singer outfit, I realize she's kind of attractive, And she's paying a lot of attention to me. And I had never had somebody like that. I had never had an attractive woman pay so much attention to me. I was 23, and that felt really nice. It was a new thing. It was cool. It was amazing, actually. So we go to this gig. She even sings like a few songs and me, throws a few kisses. It's part of the performance, I assume. And I'm kind of just enamored with this girl. Like she's kind of nice, and she's very worldly, but also she doesn't drink. So I feel like, she's not that bad. She's not that bad of a worldly person if she doesn't drink. And it's just so very nice because we're outside and we're having boneless with like the band, but the band is just talking about whatever, and it feels like her and me, we're just in this own little world of just like own little looks and sharing like this smiles and oh man, this guy's kind of boring, isn't he? And we're holding hands because what are you gonna do? It's very cold, right? And I realized that she wanted to hold my hands. Maybe could she be into me? Could this actually be happening? And just when I'm thinking of that, just when I'm seeing her, my cousin arrives. I can't just do anything because he's there, and he kind of sees how we connected, and he doesn't completely fully like that, but he's like, oh, I'm gonna let it go and whatever. Like you can tell that it was a first night. In retrospect, he also wanted to tell me that he wasn't gonna be able to drive back, but he's like, oh, I'm just not gonna tell him at the moment. Let this play out. Let's see how it goes. So I asked my cousin, like, what's up? What are the details? What happened with her? And he's like, oh, it's just we dated for a while, but she's kind of crazy. It's all over. I don't like her anymore, right? And I'm like, okay. So you're never gonna do anything with her, like ever, like that's closed, right? And he's like, yes, no, that I would never. That is just no. And in my mind, again, I know that I didn't have consent. Like I know the bro code. I know that they kind of dated for a while and they, but also I was extremely immature. I didn't know the intricacies of how you're never supposed to date them or whatever, right? Which now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of take offense to. Like, she's her own person. If she wants to date somebody, like, she should be able to date somebody. So anyway, I kind of think that I'm safe, but I also know that she is worldly, so I can't really, nothing can happen, right? Like, it's kind of nice to fantasize, and now I'm given, like, the green light to fantasize, but that's it. Like, nothing's gonna happen, because I need to leave soon anyway, and I can't get involved, because I'm a good Jehovah's Witness. But she still wants to hang out, so one night, we go to another one of her shows, we pick her up, It's very late at night. Another one of my cousin's friends also joins us later on, and it's like 2 a.m. Neither of us are particularly sleepy, so we go to this 24/7 supermarket. We buy stuff to make nachos without realizing that we don't really have anything to heat the cheese in. We just have like one of those times, one of those nights when you're a 20-year-old and you're looking for something to do. So by the time it's like 4 a.m., the friend is leaving because the friend had a car, right? And my cousin is like, hey, what's up? We're going to call her Patty because that's her name. Hey, what's up, Patty? Do you want me to take you home? I can take you home right now. And she's like, oh, no, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. We are in bunk beds. So he is in the top bed just chatting. And we are just sitting down in the bunk bed, in the lower bed, just chatting, like all three of us, right? And then we kind of just like laid back. Because, it was like 4 a.m. We're kind of tired. And then my cousin also like lays into the bed and we kind of just fall asleep. Like we were just talking. And the next thing I remember is that I'm waking up to her. And she looks gorgeous. Because I had never woken up next to a woman. And then she kind of like wakes up a little bit. And then she makes eye contact with me. And she smiles. And I kiss her. And we start kissing. And I know that nothing's going to happen. And, I didn't touch anything. Our shoes were still on, actually, because that's how bad we just fell asleep. Our shoes were still on. But to me, that was extremely special because I was 23. And that was my first kiss. My cousin had something to do very early in the morning. So she pretended to be asleep and when he woke up, because we didn't want him to, find out because he was a huge narcissist. We didn't know what was happening, but we didn't want him to find out. So she was like, oh, don't worry. I'll just ask somebody to pick me up. I'll take Danny close by for some breakfast. She told him when he woke up, and he's like, oh yeah, whatever. He didn't like leaving us alone, but he didn't also have much of a choice because he really had to leave. So he leaves, and then we go back upstairs and we start making out. He leaves at 6 a.m. We made out until noon, and I was in heaven. She was an amazing kisser. It was the best feeling of my life. It was amazing. It was exhilarating. I had never felt that. So, obvious to say, I was extremely in love with her from the beginning. Like, I had just met her, and I was just in love with this girl. The next day, I don't see her. She has something to do, and the next day, I just hang out with my cousin. I don't come forward and tell him, hey, I made out with her. Well, first of all, because she asked me not to do that. And, fair enough. But we had literally just made out. We didn't even know where it was going. So, whatever. And because it kind of felt good to just text her all throughout the day and just have this little secret. Because I was kind of realizing that my cousin, he wasn't that cool anymore. He wasn't treating women very nicely. I remember him like showing me nudes of women that he got, and I remember being just disgusted, like, dude, like, what the hell, man? Like, not even because I was a Jehovah's Witness, but because like I knew that wasn't for me. It was just, I don't know. We started to like butt heads a little bit with some stuff. So it kind of felt good to have this little secret that he didn't know about. So the next day we actually meet this girl again, and the same thing happens. We kind of just like pretend to fall asleep in the bed until my cousin goes to sleep, and then we kind of just like get under the covers, and we hold each other, and it's the most beautiful feeling I had just holding somebody, knowing that other person also like wanted to hold me. It was amazing. And we kiss a little bit, but we don't want to wake my cousin up. And we feel so good. We feel so amazing. We feel so peaceful that we just kind of like fall asleep very quickly, right? So my cousin wakes up, and we kind of like wake up with my cousin because we're kind of just waiting for that. He kind of like just wakes up like a few hours later because it was very late. He hadn't been sleeping very well because he was keeping an eye on us. And then we kind of play it the same way. Like, she's just gonna go with me to have some breakfast, and he can leave, and we're gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. So he leaves. We just wait until we hear the door close, and as soon as we hear the door close behind him, like the door downstairs, we just jump at each other. We are like heavily making out this time. Before we weren't like holding us. Now we are definitely like holding each other, and we're just enjoying the fact that we're just making out with each other, and it's amazing. It feels exciting, and it feels a little bit dangerous, and it felt insane. And then I hear something by the door. Somebody's clearing their throat, and it's neither of us. My cousin was there. He had only pretended. And then my heart sinks, because in my head, my cousin caught me doing something that I shouldn't be doing. Not, because he's connected with her in any way. He obviously feels like that. He feels like he's extremely wronged. He screams at us, and he says how terrible it is, and that we're doing it, and blah, blah, blah. And I just get my head down, and I can't defend the situation that I'm in, because I truly feel like he has power over me. At any point, he can just pick up the phone, tell my mom what's going on. My mom's gonna tell the elders. There's gonna be consequences. You don't just make out with somebody in someone's bed and leave with no consequences. That he has all of the power in that situation. He has the power over if I get reproved or whatever, and the end comes, that's it. Like, he has power over my life. It's the way I see it, because I had done something horrible. I had done something bad. I had made out with a worldly woman in a bed. So she leaves, and he just berates me for, I don't know, like what feels like hours. And then he makes it very clear how, our friendship is done pretty much. He's obviously not going to go back with me in the car, and I'm no longer welcome at the house. It was his parents' house. They weren't in town. The house was like abandoned. It's a long story. Suffice to say, I'm no longer welcome at the house. I no longer have money to go back, and I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. Fortunately, he was also not going to say anything to my mom, which is the only connection he would have to the congregation. So congregation-wise, everything's fine. I can keep my secret, but I have to leave. And I meet with her that night, and she's kind of hurt because I didn't defend her. And, fair enough. Now I kind of see that I should have said something. I obviously, there was nothing wrong with what we were doing. I mean, let me know if making out with a girl that your cousin dated very briefly and it didn't work at all, it counts as cheating on the bro code. Let me know in the comments below. But I honestly think right now that there was nothing wrong with that. She was her own person. I felt attracted to her. She was attracted to me. We did what we did, and it was fully consensual. There was nothing bad happening there. My cousin certainly did not matter in this situation. But that's obviously not the way I saw it at the time. The way I saw it at the time is that I had sinned, and I was hiding it. So I couldn't really go to anybody that I knew in Juarez because, well, they would expect me to start going to the meetings, and they would immediately notice if I start to like go out missing late at night, which is when we spend time, like after her gigs, to just go out and about and just do whatever. I can't stay in anybody's house that I know of because I would never be able to date her. And the only reason that I want to stay there is because I want to date her. I want to be with her. So I'm homeless, but also I take my beliefs very seriously. I know that technically, we haven't done anything sexual. And I have this line in the sand that I refuse to cross, which is being sexual with somebody before getting married. I really, really, really want to be sexual with this person, but I'm not going to get through Armageddon. 20 minutes of pleasure, or in my case, more fairly like 2, it's not going to compare to an eternity in paradise in my head. So I was not going to do anything with her. So that night, we kind of talk about, what's up? What are we going to do? And we decide that we're going to date, but we're not going to say anything. We're just going to keep it on the down low. I don't really realize why she wants to keep it on the down low. She was very quickly on board to keep it on the down low. And, that's fine, because I think that we can just date for a little bit as I figure out how to make enough money to just go back. And then that's it. I just dip my toe in the water, and then I just come out, haven't dated somebody, and then that's it. There's nothing bad happens. I can still go through Armageddon afterwards because I wouldn't have sinned. It is the perfect plan. Except, of course, I'm already extremely in love with her. And there's this huge issue because after a few days of sleeping in my car, because, I wasn't going to move in with her, she kind of helps me find this apartment that was in between people who were renting. So the guy didn't have any issues with, letting me live there for a little bit. And afterwards, I actually learn that she paid for it. Like, she paid for like half a month of rent or something. It's just so I could have a place to stay for a couple of weeks. It was just this abandoned house. She got me some sleeping bags and a little stove, and I was golden. I had everything I needed because I had her. And the thing that I really, really, really wanted to do was to just sleep with her, not sexually. I truly just wanted to fall asleep next to her and wake up next to her and then just kiss her again, because that is, I had never experienced such joy. But after she helps me out, I quickly realized that that's not the relationship that she wants to have. In fact, she's kind of getting over me very quickly. Now that I look back, I kind of think that what she wanted was to just kind of like be fuck buddies with me, just to trigger my cousin, because later on I would realize that she still like had some sort of feelings for him. Like it was very messy, and it was very weird, and there was a lot of things that neither of them were telling me. So it's a weird story, okay? Suffice to say, I think she was just looking for me to be like fuck buddies with her, and that's it. And I wanted for her to be my wife because, I also wanted to be sexual with her, but I couldn't do that without her being my wife. And I was in love with her, which was really bad because then the relationship became very abusive. She was very worldly, and she had lived a very hard life, and she kind of used her body to get things from men. Like, men would give her gifts in exchange of, and now I realize that I shouldn't have had any problems with that. But back then, I definitely had problems with that. But I was also extremely poor. So, what am I going to say? Don't do that. I can't pay for anything. She was paying for my rent. So she used it to tease me in the relationship and to make me feel uncomfortable. And she kind of relished in that. Like she kind of relished in making me feel very uncomfortable, and then bringing me back with a kiss or whatever. And it just, I don't know. It was very toxic, and the relationship quickly became a very, very unstable and very, very bad, because we clearly just wanted different things out of the relationship. And then when she didn't have that, then she was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have fun or something." I don't know. So the relationship turns very toxic, and it ends up being even kind of physically abusive, even at the end of the relationship. And I finally managed to get together enough money to buy a plane ticket. I can't drive my way back because I don't have enough money, but just enough money to buy a plane ticket to go back. And then I remember that I buy the tickets, and I fly a week from the date that I buy the tickets. Throughout that week, she is the most loving girlfriend ever. She still doesn't sleep with me the way that I wanted at all. She always goes to her house, which fine, fair enough. whatever, boundaries are boundaries. It doesn't matter, it will happen whenever. But she's just with me, and she's extremely loving. So by the time that I am at the airport and I'm saying goodbye, I kind of just wanted to say goodbye, and I ended up telling her that I loved her for the first time, which is, Jesus, so, oh my God, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so I tell her that I love her, and she tells me that she loves me too, which is fucking insane. It's, what? She loves me? I thought she didn't like me sometimes, and she loves me? But then I will go back to Guadalajara, and I kind of have to, like, explain my way out. So I kind of sort of say how we're kind of sort of dating. And my mom kind of hates the whole situation, obviously, because she had something to say about it. I mean, I am 23, after all, only 23. But a week later, she's there in Guadalajara. She goes there. And my mom was not going to allow her to, like, spend the night in our house, because, I mean, of course not. But she's there, and she's hanging out with my family and everything. And even though the relationship, again, turns very toxic very quickly once she's there, she also goes to the meetings with me. One time, she goes to the meetings one time, but she goes to the meetings. So I think there's hope. She goes to the airport, we make out. She tells me that she's only leaving because, she already has the ticket, but she's going to come back very, very soon. And that was the last time I saw her. She met a guy, like, 2 days after she left. She started uploading photos with a guy, and 2 weeks after, it was all over. She wanted to be with him. And I was extremely heartbroken. And I thought, this is what I get for being in Satan's system of things. I feel terrible. So I go to the only people that I know can help. The elders. There had been a change in the body of elders. I was always super close to the elders. But this new elder that is in charge, I haven't built any rapport with him. But I think, who cares? He's from Jehovah. He's an elder. I need help. And I confess. I confess to everything. I tell them everything that happened. I tell them when and how we kissed. And they asked extremely inappropriate questions. I realize now that they were looking for grounds for a judicial committee. I'm there just, like, pouring my heart out, and I'm like, no, I'm just, that wasn't what I had. Like, believe me, like, it was hard, but no, that wasn't it. And I'm trying to tell them how terrible I feel, and how, because I want them to help me. I want them to just tell me to go to the meetings more often, and to be better or whatever, right? But the guy thinks that I'm lying. The guy thinks that I'm there because I did something wrong, and I just haven't said it. And then I'm like, okay, so what do I do? And then he says, are you going to confess? And I'm like, there's nothing to confess. And he's like, well, there's nothing to do. So then I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, what? But I haven't received the help. Later on, I would discover that when I was gone, my sister also did some stuff and was also in some talks with the elders, because she got involved with somebody else, and she got disfellowshipped. And I was in a huge depression, and I couldn't just bear going to the meetings anymore, because even that reminded me of her. And so I sink into this deep depression, and for the very first time, none of us are going to the meetings. I am like 24 years old, and I just, for the very first time in my life, I stopped going to the meetings. I just didn't go again. And then we all go to the memorial, and my mom starts to go to the meetings again. But then I realized that I can just stay, and I can just not go to the meetings. And as someone with, again, undiagnosed ADHD, that's amazing, because even though I feel guilty because I'm missing out, I don't have to be in the place where I was, where I suffered some of my worst heartbreak, I feel. So I don't have to go over there, because I don't want to listen about Jehovah and about all of that stuff. For the very first time, I realized that I just don't want to know about this stuff anymore. I not for now. It's not going to help me. In some level, I don't really accept it and I don't really see it as such. But in some level, I realized that it's not going to help me. So that's when I stopped going to the meetings and became physically out, mentally in. Because I was fully mentally indoctrinated, but I was just no longer going to the meetings. So I started dating some women knowing that I was never going to be able to, be sexual with them because, I still haven't sinned. I don't want to sin. That is the one thing that I have to hold on to. So I don't get into like good relationships. I try to like pursue people that weren't really into me. And then, I finally met my partner. And we met in a very weird way. I don't know if you guys used to use 9gag. There was some post on 9gag a while ago, like 10 years ago, about something about a birthday. And I commented with my birthday date. And she sent me, like, back then 9gag was connected to your Facebook account. So people could just click onto your 9gag profile and then if they clicked on your profile, they would be directed to your Facebook profile. So she waited a few days and she sent me a happy birthday. She lived in Kuwait. I lived in Mexico. It was just a stranger doing a weird thing, like a random thing, a classic random thing of back then. Saying a happy birthday to a stranger on the internet. And I didn't see it for years. Fast forward 3 or 4 years. I am 24. I'm going through my old messages. And I realized that there's like this others folder that I've never seen with a lot of messages of like all their clients and whatever. And all the way down, it's her message. And I clicked through her profile and I realized she's kind of hot. Like she's kind of out of my league, if I'm honest. Like there's just no way. But I can't resist just not saying something back because, she's very hot and she's opening up a conversation. So I text her something lame like, oh, it was probably a good birthday, haha, I can't remember, or something like that. She pretends to be all heartbroken because I forgot her or whatever. And, we kind of just chat and we start chatting and we kind of don't stop chatting since. A few months later, like, we realize that we have feelings for each other and we realize that we're very attracted to each other and we realize that we gotta meet. And for the very, very, very first time in my life, I am making above the minimum wage so I can actually afford to go on a trip to Europe to just meet her. She couldn't get a Schengen visa. We originally wanted to meet in Paris. So we ended up meeting in Istanbul, in Turkey. We had agreed, like, from the beginning, hey, like, we chat and everything, but maybe we don't have chemistry when we meet. And that's totally going to be fine. But we had insane chemistry when we met. I had never had so much chemistry with anybody in my life. I was just completely in love with her. It was like we were just connected somehow. I can't explain it. If you felt it before, you know how this feels. And if you haven't felt it, there's no way that I can explain it. But we felt made for each other. And we had like this week of just us being in Turkey all by ourselves, except I was still indoctrinated and I still didn't want to do it. So, all of that time, like, we could have had a very, very, very fun vacation. And instead we just went sightseeing. It was pretty bad. Sure, I got to see the inside of the Hagia Sophia or whatever, but there were some other insights that if I hadn't been indoctrinated, we would have taken our time to just date a little bit more, because we were in a long distance relationship for a little bit less than 2 years, and we had very cool trips where we would just meet every few months. After that trip, like, she came over here, and it was very cool. It was a very cool relationship that I feel could have been in the relationship format, and we could have like focused more on like building our futures or whatever without getting married. But I wanted to get married immediately because I needed to know what sex was like. I needed to know. I was 25. I needed to know what it was like. So we ended up getting married when I was 20. We were about to turn 26. Cause I forgot to tell you. Later on, we realized that we were born in the same day, like literally the same day of the same year of the same everything. It literally at the same hour. Like I was born at 10 p.m. over here in Mexico, and she was born at 10 p.m. in Tartus in Syria. We technically were born at the same time, which is, it's insane. Again, it just felt like it was meant to. Do you see what I mean when I say that it felt like it was meant to be? Like, I mean, you can't make this shit up. And once I got married, I was extremely happy. I was extremely happy with her. Like, we didn't have a lot of money, and we've never had that much money, but it didn't matter because our marriage is about way more than conventional stuff, and I was extremely happy with her. We were happy together. She was happy with me. We lived a very happy life here in Mexico, except every now and then I just had this crisis where I just kind of broke down because I knew that I had to go back to the meetings. I knew that I had to do that, but I didn't want to do that because, it's so hard and it's so boring. But I knew that if I wanted to be a good husband or whatever, I had to go back to the meetings. That is the way that I saw it. So I started slowly going back to the meetings and slowly going back to some of the conventions. And in one of the conventions, I meet this guy and his wife, Jeff and Mara, and they kind of like become somewhat close friends with me after about like 3 years of just me not knowing anything back. Like, it's got to be 2 years by now, 2 years ago. Jeff finally does something that is the answer to a prayer that I had since I became a POMI, physically out, mentally in. I was praying to Jehovah to just show me something, to just show me the sign, to just show me how to go back, because I didn't know. I was lost and blah blah blah. You know how it is when you have a vague issue with religion, and religion is both the issue and the answer. So Jeff, out of the blue, just calls me, gives me a call, and wants to know about my spiritual health. And we end up chatting about spiritual stuff for 3 hours. Turns out he's an elder now. And he's reaching out. And I take that as the answer to my prayers. I realize Jeff is reaching out because I've been praying. So that's when I start properly, like actually saying, okay, you know what? Let's actually do this. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna become a good Jehovah's Witness. I'm gonna do what I know is right and become a Jehovah's Witness. But I've been outside for way too long. I need to start from the beginning. So I start going to the website, and I realize that there's a lot of things that I don't really recognize. There's a lot of videos now. It's very different from what I used to remember. Like, I guess I'm gonna have to start from scratch. So I go to the FAQ page, and the FAQ page, it makes no sense. I would talk more about it, but my friend Jake from Outwardly has already talked about it, and he has a JW Facts website that I'll link over here if I don't forget. Give that a look. It's extremely deceitful. So I start thinking, okay, I'm just gonna have to read the Bible. I didn't want to read the original version because that was the one that I was reading it. However, I couldn't find another version, and again, I've never had that much money. Okay, Bibles are expensive, and I didn't want to read from my phone. Like, what kind of weirdo reads from their phone? Like, I can't read books from my phone. I had to read an actual Bible. So I realized that I have an English translation, which, albeit is from the Jehovah's Witnesses, it will still do. That way, I can read it and just start absorbing it again, just like from a fresh start. But then I realize the more I read the Bible, the less sense it makes. It makes very little sense. It's almost like I can't remember what I was supposed to believe in when I read these verses. So I start thinking, okay, every time that I see an issue with this, I'm just gonna put in a post-it, right? I'm gonna put in a post-it, and I'm gonna tell to Jeff. I'm gonna tell Jeff, Jeff is probably gonna call me soon again because he's gonna want to know how I'm doing. So I'm not gonna call him. I'm not gonna call him just like last time because Jehovah. I'm just gonna tell Jeff. I'm just gonna put a post-it. So I saw one thing and I was like, okay, this is posted. And I didn't think that I would have more than a couple of post-its, but I actually have. Let me show you. This is the Bible that I ended up having. Just all of these little post-its, all of these, color-coded, according to every kind of issue, doctrinal issue, the blood issue, the war issue, the yellow one. The yellow ones are the ones that directly debunk something in the theology. Like all of them directly debunk, but the yellow ones are the ones that directly debunk the leadership of the religion. All of them debunk something in the organization. So that leads me to like a few weeks of just me reading the Bible and realizing that I just can't understand it. So I started looking up some stuff, just like the stuff that I know that I am supposed to read in the Bible, but just so I can get to that understanding without getting through jw.org, because if it's the truth, then that's the truth, right? I should be able to get to the truth without having to go through jw.org. And that's when I found JW Facts. I was extremely jittery when I first saw it. The first page that I clicked was about disfellowshipping because I could not make sense of disfellowshipping anymore. I couldn't find enough proof for disfellowshipping in the Bible. I just couldn't. I felt that I was missing verses, but so I'm shaking as I go through JW Facts, and I read through it, and it's like somebody is opening my eyes. It's like I'm finally understanding the Bible. And I finished reading the shunning thing, and I realized I can't be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. I can't. They got this wrong. What else did they get wrong? This is clear. They clearly got it wrong. Because not only Paul Grundy, the writer of JW Facts, not only did a fantastic job at saying why it is that the Bible doesn't approve disfellowshipping, it also does a thorough debunking of how the Jehovah's Witnesses do disfellowshipping now. I learned so many things, and every day I would just add more post-its to just ask Jeff until I realized, like after, again, a couple of weeks of just reading of a month now that I had barely slept because I just woke up and I just read the Bible all day and just went on JW Facts and just looked up what the Bible verses meant and JW Facts would just redirect me to jw.org, and I would just realize the truth about that issue. And after a month of that, I remember breaking down in my desk, adding another post-it, looking at my Bible and thinking, how many post-its do you have to have until you realize that everything you believed in is wrong? How many more? And it was, when I had that realization, it was extremely profound because I realized that everything was wrong. All of my life was wrong. Because if this was wrong and this is the way that I've been living my life, then I had nothing. I had nothing. And then, oh God, that also meant that I was never gonna see my grandma again. That also meant that I was gonna die one day. That also meant that my partner was gonna die one day, and that was gonna be the end of it. I suffered such a shock that I still feel like 2 years later, I'm still adapting. I still feel like that sometimes. It's weird because I very slowly started debunking the whole religion for myself, just for me. I never thought that I would make videos. I didn't think that I'll be one of those. I just wanted to leave quietly because I didn't want to be I didn't want to be an apostate. I just wanted to learn the truth and move on. I feel like now I am a more loving person. Ray France, in his memoir, he writes about how when he woke up, he was finally able to see people as people. And when I first read that, I was first waking up, and I was like, I don't know what he means. But after a few months, I kind of, for the very first time, I kind of started seeing people as people. Not as worldly people, as just people. And just take them for who they were, not for who I thought they were. And realized that, they proved me wrong. Worldly people are not dangerous. They're regular people. They're like me, better than me, because they weren't going through all of this crises. They had gone through all of those crises a while ago. They had solved those issues a while ago. They didn't have the issues that I had, so they were better than me, and that started making me extremely humble about where I came from and who I was. And I kind of, the more I wake up, and the more that I become who I think that I should have become from the beginning, the more I realize that we are all the same. We really are all the same. That is the secret of happiness, the secret of humanity, the secret of everything, is to realize that we are the same. We literally are the same. Most people are just trying to get by. And the things that they do, the things that they say, is just them trying to get by. And you just never know what kind of story they have. I realized how hateful I was, how homophobic I was. The thing is, I realize now that I'm able to think about it and to truly examine myself, I realize now that I truly am straight. I was always very afraid of touching that, because I'm like, I feel like I'm straight, but that's the right call, so better not go touching. Now, I haven't been with a guy or anything, but now I'm able to like fully examine myself and realize, okay, now that I know that it's fine, do I still want to be with a guy? Is that something, would that awaken something in me? And I realized that no, definitely not. I can't even imagine being attracted to a man. So it was extremely easy for me to dismiss homosexuals, because to me they were deviants. They were the deviants that the Jehovah's Witnesses wanted me to think that they are, because they were weird. They were not like me. So I was extremely homophobic, extremely transphobic, and now I'm neither of those things. Now I'm all for people, and the more I woke up, the more I realized that maybe I could help somebody by putting myself out there. Maybe I could reach somebody. Maybe I could pay it forward, just like the brothers back then asked me to pay it forward by being spiritual. The people that helped me wake up, that, some of them are not even alive anymore. They wouldn't want anything from me, but I feel like maybe it was a good thing that I would try to pay it forward. It was only fair that I would try to pay it forward, because everybody, I don't know if this is the right way to see the world, but I know that a way to see the world that is based on facts, that is based on humanity, that is based on kindness, that is based on science, and that is based on the true belief that we are all the same. I think that is a more valid way of seeing the world than the way that Jehovah's Witnesses see it. But I was very afraid. I had some friends still in the religion that were still not shunning me, even though I hadn't been to the meetings in forever, and I didn't want to put them in a tough situation. So I kind of, I set up the Patreon, and I set up the YouTube account and all of that stuff, because I wanted to help people. I wanted to just tell my story, and I felt like I could see. Now I could see the matrix with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I could see where the indoctrination was, and I could see how the manipulation worked. And I wanted to tell other people that. I wanted to tell you who is watching. I wanted to tell you about it. I started doing it, but then I immediately slowed down because of the death of my kitten, Zeus. I talk in the downer video. We're trying not to be down in this video. Okay, we're almost done making the channel and seeing it grow and sharing my story and sharing my takes with you has been extremely helpful for me. The fact that you're there, the fact that you comment, the fact that you watch, the fact that you interact with my content whatsoever. And my videos now get thousands of views, and that is insane. That is, I know that I'm a tiny creator. I know that I'm not the biggest YouTube creator in a long shot. I am a tiny creator, but the tiny amount of attention that I get is attention that I can redirect to the Jehovah's Witnesses and the issues and how they fucked me up and how they're screwing other people's lives, and maybe we can give people the tools to wake themselves up. Maybe we can reach to some people, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. Through some talks and whatever, I realize that maybe I don't have to worry that much about my friends not abandoning me if I show my face. So now this is kind of the new video style. Not necessarily. I mean, you're still gonna see Caleb around. Again, I need to purchase a new Caleb more appropriate T-shirt. But yeah, we're still gonna see Caleb around. But I'm gonna be able to just tell you about sort of my stories or the stuff that I went through. When I was first waking up, I kind of thought that it was just going to be a matter of like a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, and I was just going to be able to read about how I was wrong, and then I would just be able to move on. It's been a couple of years since then, and I realized that we don't wake up like that. Indoctrination doesn't just leave because you know that your belief system is wrong. There are still ways of thinking that you can still carry with yourself, and that it can still affect you, that are remaining from indoctrination. You can have misogynist tendencies and not even realize that. You can have homophobic tendencies and not even realize that. You can have tribalistic tendencies, superiority tendencies, all of these tendencies, narcissistic tendencies, all of these tendencies that are part of the cult that we left. I know that you may have it because I had them. I still struggle with indoctrination every day. I feel like I'm trying to become a new person, the person that I was always trying to be. I have a completely new philosophy in life. My new philosophy is believe whatever you want, just don't be a dick about it. That's my new philosophy, and it has worked great so far. I love not having to judge a gay couple for making out. I'm not saying I'm happy to see people making out or whatever. It doesn't matter to me anymore, and that is a beautiful thing. I don't care if somebody wants to make out with somebody, as long as both of them are consenting. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, and that is a beautiful thing. I didn't realize how much time and how much effort I was wasting judging people, and that's amazing. I've been talking about my video of my mental health, and to give you a quick update on that before we leave, I'm slightly better. I'm slightly better every day. I appreciate all of the people that have sent messages my way and that worry. So I want to give you an update. And yeah, it's just I'm still struggling mentally with the same issues pretty much, and other issues as well. I'm struggling financially because I spend way too many hours doing this. I'm not complaining. It's just I always want to make the best video that I can make, and I'm a huge perfectionist in videos, even though my videos are not perfect whatsoever. But that's only because I always stop myself, and I don't have the skill set yet to make amazing looking videos or anything, and that frustrates me. So I spend way too much just editing videos and putting them together and watching cult propaganda and all of that stuff. So that leaves very little time to make actual money, because unfortunately this doesn't really make money. If you get into this because you want to make money, you realize that this doesn't really make a lot. So I've been living, pretty frugally to be able to do this as often as I'm able to do this. I changed a lot of things just so I'm able to spend as much time as possible doing this, which is why I want to dedicate this video to my Patreons and my YouTube supporters, whose names are going to be rolling right now, every single one of them. It doesn't matter if you've supported me since I opened my Patreon or if you've just been able to support me like for 1 month. It doesn't matter. Your name will still show up here because I really, really appreciate it when people take literal money out of their pocket to support me. That is insane. That is amazing. I don't have any words to express my gratitude. My Patreon funds come right before rent day, so it's just really great to just have this little extra help where I can be like, okay, I at least I don't have to cover the entire amount by myself. So thank you so much, and I guess you'll see me around.